The mad dog that saved her life. On a scorching summer afternoon, the quiet streets of Belmere erupted with chaos. A scream tore through the neighborhood. A rabid dog is dragging a little girl. Doors flew open. People poured onto porches. And at the center of the street, a horrifying sight. A massive German shepherd, covered in blood, was pulling the limp body of a 3-year-old girl. Rocks were thrown. Panic surged. No one saw what had happened before. They only saw what they thought, a monster. But they were wrong, because this wasn't an attack. It was a rescue. And the mad dog wasn't rabid. He was dying, but still trying to save the only child who'd ever loved him. It started with a scream. Not the startled kind that flickers and dies in the summer air, but a raw, throat-tearing cry that rolled down Oakridge Hill like thunder, jagged and sharp and impossible to ignore. "Mad dog! It's attacking a child!" Doors slammed open. Sandals slapped against pavement. A mother clutched her toddler tighter against her chest as she rushed toward the sound, eyes scanning wildly. Teenagers on bikes skidded to a halt near the corner mailbox. One boy dropped his frozen lemonade. Another fumbled with his phone, already dialing 911. And then they saw it. A massive German shepherd, coat dirty and streaked with something red, dragging the limp body of a child by the sleeve of her pink shirt. Her hair trailed behind her like unraveling thread. One shoe was gone. Her small fingers scraped silently across the cracked sidewalk as the dog pulled her closer to the street. The crowd surged back. Someone gasped. Someone else shouted, "Somebody stop it! It's got her neck! That thing's gone wild." What no one saw, what no one wanted to see, was the blue creeping into the little girl's lips, or the way her chest barely rose, or the angry red welts spidering across her skin. They didn't see a child who couldn't breathe. They saw a monster dragging her like prey. The dog's name was Bronn, though no one in the crowd knew that. To them, he was just a stray, a threat, something to fear and drive away. He stood his ground, thick paws planted on the sidewalk, his body curved protectively around the girl. His jaws were locked on her sleeve, not her flesh, and he growled low at anyone who came too close. Blood trickled down from above his right eye where a rock had already struck him. His ears twitched. His body trembled. But he didn't move. Not away. Not without her. Harriet Gable, the baker from Elm Street, grabbed the nearest thing, a plastic planter, and hurled it. It bounced off a trash can and shattered. "Call animal control, now!" she shrieked. Across the road, Mr. Dell, who used to coach Little League, pulled his son behind his truck. "Don't look," he whispered. But it was too late. The boy had already seen the dog's head stained with blood and the stillness of the girl's limbs. Behind them, a screen door slammed. Old Harold Wilkins, former K-9 officer turned town recluse, stepped onto his porch. His eyes narrowed beneath his veteran's cap. He grunted as he hobbled closer with a cane in one hand and suspicion in the other. "That dog's dangerous," he muttered. "It's gone rogue." Lyla Winters was 3 years old. She loved peanut butter sandwiches without crusts. She called butterflies flutter friends. And she had a secret with fur and amber eyes, and a name that she had whispered into the hollow of her hands on summer mornings. But now, Lyla wasn't whispering anything. Her body was too still. Her skin was flushed with angry splotches, her tiny chest strained with shallow, rapid attempts to pull in air, and failed. And Bronn knew. He could feel it. He could hear the changes in her breath, smell the danger that her body couldn't name. So he pulled. Every muscle in his battered frame strained as he dragged her over the pavement. His claws scraped against concrete. His breathing came in wheezes. Every few feet he paused, nudging her face with his nose, before he continued on, determined to get her somewhere someone could help. Instead, they threw more rocks. One hit his flank. Another clipped his ear. Someone grabbed a broom. Another raised a rake. Bronn growled louder, his body hunched now, standing over Lyla like a shield. He didn't bark. He didn't lunge. He simply stayed, guarding the girl who fed him crusts and whispered stories, the one who came to the garden stump with pockets full of ham slices, the one who made him feel like he still mattered. The pain throbbed through his chest. His vision blurred. Blood matted his fur, and the voices were rising, shouting louder now, angrier, closer. And still, no one saw. Not the hives, not the swelling, not the girl's fluttering, failing breaths. They only saw the dog with blood on his head and a child that didn't move. Then came the sirens, a screech of tires, a door slammed, and a voice, loud, calm, commanding, cut through the mob like a knife. "Move! Out of my way!" Dr. Ira Bennett stepped from his dusty sedan, medical bag already unzipped in one hand. A former combat medic, and now town veterinarian, he still carried the posture of someone who didn't wait for permission. "What's happening?" he barked. "It's attacking that little girl," someone shrieked. "She's unconscious," someone else cried. "The dog won't let go." Ira's eyes flicked once to Bronn, then to the girl, then back. He dropped to one knee, fast. Unzipped his bag fully. "Back up. Now." Bronn growled again, low and warning, but Ira didn't flinch. His movements were practiced, his voice steady. "You're not the enemy," he murmured to the dog. "You got her here, didn't you?" Then he gently reached forward, past Bronn's trembling form, and touched the girl's neck. The crowd waited, breathless. Bronn didn't move. And in that moment, for the first time, someone saw what the dog saw. Lyla Winters, tiny, stung, dying, wasn't being attacked. She was being saved. Joanna Winters didn't hear the full scream, only the last part of it, the part that cracked, that collapsed under its own fear. She was 3 blocks away, behind the wheel of her aging sedan, halfway through a call with the school district about classroom supply budgets, when the message flashed across her screen. "Child down. Oakridge and 7th. Possible animal attack." She hadn't even processed it. Not fully. But something in her gut turned cold. She turned off the call without a word, swerved into a no-parking zone, and ran. The closer she got, the louder the noise became. A strange kind of roar, voices tangled together, panic-fed and frantic. Then she saw the gathering crowd. And then she saw the blood. Her breath caught mid-inhale. There, on the pavement beneath the blistering sun, was her daughter, Lyla, unmoving, face swollen, skin blotched red and white and frighteningly pale in places. And over her, the dog. Not just any dog. A large, wild-looking German shepherd, its chest heaving, blood streaked across its face and flanks, its mouth clamped down on her daughter's shirt. For a split second, Joanna forgot how to breathe. "No, no, no, no," she whispered, staggering forward. "Lyla!" The crowd barely turned before she was pushing through them, her keys falling from her shaking hands. "Get it off her!" she screamed, eyes wide with terror. "That thing's killing her!" "Ma'am, stop, don't get too close," someone shouted. A pair of arms held her back. Harold Wilkins, his grip firm, steady despite the tremor in his age-lined hands. "That's your kid?" he asked sharply. "She's mine, let me go. That animal's on her, he's killing her." She was sobbing now, desperate, ferocious. "I said give me space!" Another voice cut in, louder than all the others. Dr. Ira Bennett didn't shout often, but when he did, the world listened. He dropped to his knees beside the little girl, bag already open. "Joanna," he barked, recognizing her. "You need to breathe." "She's not moving, Ira, she's not. What happened? Why is there blood?" "It's not hers." His hands were already moving, gloves on, injector out. "Listen to me. The dog didn't bite her. She's having a reaction. Bees or wasps. Severe." Joanna blinked through her tears. Her legs gave out beneath her. "She has no allergies. She was just at home. Not all allergies show up early. You need to trust me right now." She could barely nod. Her hands clutched at the sidewalk for balance, her knees scraped raw. Dr. Bennett placed 2 fingers against Lila's throat, then pressed the epinephrine injector into the side of her thigh, counting aloud. 2, 3, 4. The dog, Bronn, growled softly but didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on Ira's every movement, cautious but strangely controlled. Not vicious, not panicked, just watchful. "He's not letting go," someone whispered. "He's got her shirt, not her arm. It's still dangerous. Call animal control, or the news, maybe both. I think that's the Patterson dog, from way back. No, that one was put down, wasn't it? Might be rabid. Look at the eyes, look at the blood." Ira didn't look up. "Someone shut them up," he muttered. Harold stepped forward. "Back off," he growled. "Give the doc room." "Do something," Joanna whispered, her voice cracking as she leaned over Lila's tiny, unmoving body. "Please." "I am," Ira said gently, glancing at the girl's lips. "Color's improving. That's a good sign." The world around her spun, the faces, the voices, the heat. But all Joanna could see was her baby, the child she had carried and fed and worried over every night for 3 years, lying still while a bloodied dog hovered over her like a ghost. "You need to move back," Ira said again, more firmly this time. "Let me work." Joanna crawled backward on instinct. Her arms couldn't hold her up anymore, and the dog, Bronn, shifted with her. Not forward, but sideways, still between Lyla and the crowd, still curled protectively like some ancient sentinel, like he knew no one else saw what he saw. An engine rumbled behind them. Flashing lights painted the pavement in red and white. The ambulance. Paramedics jumped out before the vehicle stopped rolling. Ira raised a hand. "Anaphylaxis. She's responding to epi. Bring oxygen and a backboard, fast." The dog tensed again, growled low. "He's still not letting go," a paramedic said nervously. "I'll handle it." Ira took a breath, crouched low, and looked Bronn in the eye. "You did your job, boy," he murmured. "Now let me do mine." Bronn didn't blink, didn't budge. His body trembled slightly. "Please," Ira whispered. "She's safe now. You did it." For a moment, nothing. Then, like a breath leaving his body, Bronn released the shirt, took one small step back, still close, still watching, but trusting, just enough. Joanna watched in stunned silence as the medics lifted Lyla onto the stretcher, her chest now rising more fully, her fingers twitching. "She's gonna be okay," Ira said softly. She'll need the hospital, but you got lucky." Joanna barely heard him. All she could see was the dog, the blood, the stare, the way he had stood over her daughter like a wall of muscle and breath and fury. Not to harm her, but to hold off the world. And for the first time since arriving, Joanna didn't see a monster. She saw a protector. The ambulance pulled away with a howl of sirens and a promise. Inside, Lyla Winters lay strapped to a gurney, her oxygen mask fogging gently with each breath, shallow but real. Her tiny hand, once limp, twitched beneath the blanket. Joanna sat beside her, eyes fixed on her daughter's face like a mother trying to memorize life itself. And still, down on Oakridge Hill, the crowd lingered, still stunned, still murmuring. A collective silence had settled, not peaceful, just confused, embarrassed, ashamed. Bronn stood near the curb, his coat matted, his legs trembling from exhaustion and blood loss. One eye was nearly swollen shut from the rock that had struck him earlier. His breathing came in short, rattled bursts. His body sagged low, but he refused to lie down. He watched the ambulance disappear like a soldier who had stayed too long on a battlefield, unsure whether the mission was over or just beginning. Dr. Ira Bennett turned to the crowd, his gloves peeled off and crumpled in one hand. "I'm going to say this once," he said, voice cold steel under summer heat. "That wasn't an attack. It was a rescue." No one responded at first. The only sound came from the hum of air conditioners and the slow creak of a rocking chair on someone's porch. "He dragged her here by her shirt sleeve," Ira continued, eyes locking on the people who had shouted the loudest. "Not her skin, not her arm, not her throat." He let that settle. Her face was swollen from bee stings. She was having a full-blown anaphylactic reaction. If he hadn't gotten her here when he did... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. They all understood now. Across the sidewalk, Glenda Hayes, who had called 911, looked down at her hands. They were still shaking. "I thought he was hurting her," she whispered. "I really thought—" Harold Wilkins cleared his throat. "Dogs don't pull bodies that far if they're trying to kill 'em," he muttered, mostly to himself. "That takes control. Training." Someone else spoke up, a teen who had filmed part of it on his phone. "He kept checking her, like he was making sure she was breathing." Another neighbor added, "He took every hit, never let go, didn't even bark." Bit by bit, the tide began to turn. Not loudly, not all at once, but eyes that once burned with fear now blinked with guilt. Hands that had clenched in fists now loosened. And somewhere deep down in that crowd, a few hearts cracked open, just enough to let in a flicker of what had really happened. Bronn took a step backward, just one. It was subtle, but deliberate. His tail remained low, his head bowed. He was leaving, slipping into the edges of their vision. No bark, no cry, just the quiet fade of someone who had never expected thanks, and had long ago stopped waiting for it. "Wait," someone called. But Bronn didn't wait. The people had seen enough of him. And he'd seen enough of them. He turned, slow, shaky, and limped toward the edge of the street, where the trees pressed close and the garden lot behind the fence yawned like a waiting mouth. He paused at the gap, the same one he'd squeezed Lyla through not long ago. One last look, not for the crowd, not for glory, but for the ambulance lights vanishing in the distance, the girl he had carried with teeth and trembling limbs. She was safe now, and that was enough. With one last breath, Bronn slipped through the fence and disappeared into the wild tangle of green. Ira watched him go, jaw tight. "Somebody should help that dog," Glenda whispered. "He's bleeding." Harold exhaled through his nose. Someone should have helped him a long time ago. No one moved to follow. Not yet. But the spell was broken, and the story had begun to change. Down the road, the sky darkened, not with storm, but with dusk. The heat of the day softened into evening. The sidewalk still bore streaks of blood. A broken leash lay forgotten near a mailbox. And in the distance, from the hollow where forgotten things grew, a quiet rustle vanished into silence. They had called him a monster, but he was a guardian, and that was the day Riverdale stopped calling him Stray and began remembering his name. Bronn. Before the screaming, before the rocks, before the blood stained his coat and the name Bronn echoed in shocked voices across Oakridge Hill. There was the garden, not the trimmed flower-bed kind, but the kind that grew wild when no one watched. It sprawled behind the Winters' backyard, once part of an old community plot abandoned when funding dried up and families stopped showing up with gloves and spades. What remained was a kingdom of tangled green, blackberry thickets, crooked stepping stones, and towering weeds that Lyla believed were enchanted. To her, it was magic. To Bronn, it was home. She'd first seen him on a cloudy Tuesday in May, a shadow just beyond the broken slats in the backyard fence. Her mother was folding laundry. Her father was late coming home. And Lyla, 3 years old, with a peanut butter-streaked face and a heart too big for her age, had followed a butterfly through the fence crack and into the unknown. That was when she saw the dog. He stood still beneath a dead apple tree. His ribs showed. His eyes didn't shine. They watched. Quiet, deep, cautious. A scar marked his flank. One ear stood, while the other sagged. And though he looked like the wolves in the scary bedtime books, Lyla didn't feel fear. She felt seen. The first time, she just looked. The second time, she brought half a sandwich. It was ham, cut diagonally the way she liked it. She hid it in a napkin and pressed it into her jacket pocket like treasure. She waited until her mom was on the phone, then crept outside, shoes silent on the soft grass. He was there again. Not close, not far. Just waiting. "I brought you a treat," she whispered, holding the napkin out in 2 shaky hands. Bronn didn't move at first. Then, slowly, he padded forward, head low. He took the offering so gently that she giggled. "You're not scary," she said. "You're hungry." The dog blinked. That was the beginning. Days turned into weeks. Lyla came every afternoon, always with something. A slice of turkey from her lunch, the crusts of her grilled cheese, a string cheese once. He didn't like it. And once even a crayon, though she apologized for that. "I forgot," she explained. "But you can keep it anyway. It's purple." She named him Bronn because it sounded like a knight. He never barked, never chased, never begged. He listened. He listened to everything. How she missed her grandpa, who used to read stories in the rocking chair no one sat in anymore. How her daddy was sad a lot lately, but said it was just work stuff. How her mommy cried sometimes when she thought Lyla was asleep. "You don't tell secrets, do you?" she asked one afternoon, crawling close enough to lay her head against his shoulder. He stayed still, heavy and warm, as her tiny fingers curled into his fur. "I knew it," she whispered. "You're the best secret keeper in the world." Sometimes they didn't speak at all. She'd just sit near him, humming softly, plucking clovers from the grass. He'd rest his head on his paws, eyes half closed, always between her and the fence, always listening. The garden became their world. Where adults saw weeds, Lyla saw jungles. Where they saw trash, she saw treasure. And where they saw danger, she found comfort. There was a tree stump near the back, hollowed out with rot and vines, that she called the fairy castle. She tried to decorate it with shiny rocks and leaves, but Bronn always nudged her away when she got too close. "No?" she asked, surprised. He growled low, not at her, but at the stump. She frowned. "Okay, no fairy house." She never touched it again. One rainy morning, Bronn didn't come. She waited by the fence with a slice of apple tucked into her hoodie. Waited through lunch, waited again after her nap. But the shadows stayed still, and the air smelled empty. Lyla cried that night, quietly, into her pillow, and whispered to the dark, "Please come back. I miss you." The next afternoon he returned, limping slightly, a new scratch on his shoulder. "You got in a fight?" she scolded gently, placing her forehead to his. "Don't do that. You have me." Bronn let out a breath. It almost sounded like a sigh. No one knew. Not her mother, who thought Lyla was coloring in her room. Not her father, who worked late and didn't ask questions about juice-stained pockets or disappearing sandwich crusts. Only Lyla knew where the purple crayon went. Only she knew why her shoes had muddy prints. And only she knew that her best friend was a forgotten dog who waited in the wild place behind the fence. She never spoke his name aloud inside the house. It belonged to the garden, to the secret, to Bronn. And on one July afternoon, hotter than most, she brought 2 slices of turkey and said, with quiet pride, "You're my very best friend, Bronn, even if nobody else knows you." The dog tilted his head, and in his stillness, in his patience, in the gentle nudge of his nose against her knee, it was as if he answered, "I know you, and that's enough." It was the kind of night where nothing felt quite right. The air was thick, restless. A storm had passed through earlier, leaving the patio slick and the garden breathing steam. Crickets chirped too loud. Porch light flickered like it was trying to say something, and no one was listening. Joanna stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, her voice sharp but tired. "I said I don't feel safe, Robert." He growled at the mailman again. "And Lila's scared of him." "She's not scared of him," Robert said softly. "She should be." Her voice cracked, not with anger, but with something deeper. Frayed nerves, maybe, or guilt she couldn't name. "He's a dog, Joanna. A good one," Robert tried again, rubbing his temple. "He just needs more time." Joanna shook her head. "We don't have more time. Lila's 3. What happens if he snaps? What happens if he forgets we're not his enemies?" There was no shouting, no slammed doors, just tension, worn thin from months of half-said things and silent meals. The kind of tension that fills a house like fog, hard to see, harder to breathe. She turned away. "I want him gone, Robert. Tonight." Bronn lay curled near the back door. He hadn't moved much that day, not after Joanna screamed when he tried to follow Lyla too close. He didn't bark, didn't beg, just lay there, watching, ears flicking every now and then at the sound of voices he couldn't understand but always tried to. When Robert approached, Bronn lifted his head. His tail thumped once. Robert crouched, one hand resting on the dog's shoulder, The fur was thick and warm. He felt the beat of the heart underneath. Steady. Strong. "I didn't want this," he whispered. "You know that, right?" Bronn just blinked. "I wanted to keep you. I wanted to fight harder for you. But she's scared. And I'm tired." He glanced toward the dark hallway where Joanna had gone to bed. From Lyla's room a soft hum played, one of those gentle lullaby machines she couldn't sleep without. The sound drifted like fog through the cracked door. Robert swallowed hard. "She loves you, you know. She just doesn't know how yet." Bronn nudged his head closer. It was almost enough to break him. The gate creaked. Robert stood in the backyard, barefoot in the damp grass. Crickets paused their song as if sensing something sacred was being broken. He opened the latch slowly, careful not to let it clang. Bronn padded beside him, quiet as shadow. "You'll be okay out there," Robert whispered. "You're strong." He looked down into those amber eyes, and for the first time in months, they looked back without fear. Just trust. It gutted him. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "I should have done more. I should have made her see." He knelt one last time and pressed his forehead to Bronn's. "I hope someday you'll forgive us." Bronn stepped through the opening into the dark. He didn't run. He didn't look back. He just disappeared into the tall weeds behind the fence, like he'd always belonged there. Inside the house, Joanna stood behind the curtains, unseen, unmoving. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. But something in her chest tugged as she watched the dog vanish, not because she hated him, not even because she feared him, but because part of her knew he never really belonged to them. They had belonged to him. The next morning, Lyla ran outside in her pajamas, clutched a peanut butter cracker in one hand. "Bronn?" she called, peering through the slats in the fence. "Bronny?" She waited and waited. Nothing stirred. She left the cracker on the stone near the stump, like always, and went back inside. "Where's Bronn?" she asked at lunch. Robert blinked, coffee halfway to his lips. Joanna looked up from her phone. Robert smiled tightly. "He was adopted," he said. Lyla tilted her head. "Adopted?" "Yep. Nice family, big yard, lots of toys." "Oh." Lyla blinked. "Okay." She took another bite of sandwich. Didn't ask again. But that night, long after the bedtime story ended and the nightlight glowed soft orange beside her bed, she whispered into the dark, "Come back, Bronn. I'll find you." And somewhere, beneath trees and time and terrible silence, he waited. After Bronn vanished, Lyla didn't cry, not in the way her parents expected. She didn't throw tantrums. She didn't ask again about the big doggy with the soft ears. She didn't scream or pout or sulk. She just became quiet. Too quiet. Joanna thought the silence was a sign of moving on. "She's okay," she told Robert one night, folding socks into mismatched pairs. "Kids forget fast. Maybe it's for the best." Robert nodded, but didn't respond. He hadn't forgotten. Not the feel of fur under his fingers, not the eyes that followed him into every dream. And Lyla? Lyla hadn't forgotten anything. The garden behind the fence had changed. Not much to anyone else. Still overgrown, still wild. But to Lyla, it pulsed now. With meaning, with memory. She slipped out the back door the way she'd always done, when her mother was distracted, when her father worked late. The ground was soft, the stepping stones slippery. She knew which ones wobbled, which ones creaked. She carried food in a napkin, sometimes crackers, sometimes little pieces of chicken wrapped in paper towels she stole from the kitchen, and she always brought her voice, not loud, not bold, but a whisper, carried only to him. Bronn had made a den, not a real one, not like wolves in the books, but a hidden spot behind the ivy-covered maintenance shed on the far edge of the garden, half-roofed, shielded from the wind. That's where he waited. He didn't bark when she came, didn't lunge. He just stood, tail twitching once, ears perked. It was enough. He remembered. They created their own rhythm. Every afternoon, she slipped behind the fence. Every afternoon, he was there. Sometimes she sat and talked about her favorite cartoon, about how her mommy cried in the shower but didn't think Lyla noticed, about how the soup at daycare was gross, and Bronn probably wouldn't like it either. Sometimes they didn't speak at all. She'd braid tall grass into loops and place them on his ears like a crown. He never shook them off. She once leaned against him while he lay in the tall weeds, staring up at the sky. "You're still my best friend," she whispered, "and I'm still yours." Bronn's tail thudded softly once. There was a stump near the center of the garden. The fairy house. It was their kingdom. She decorated it with bottle caps, shiny pebbles, a broken hairpin shaped like a star. She placed a leaf carefully at its foot one day. "This is a door," she told him. "You can only open it with a secret." She bent down, pressed her lips close. "I love you." Bronn nudged her shoulder gently. It was enough. Her mother never noticed the stains on her shoes, the soft dirt on her knees. Her father suspected something once, saw her slip a slice of ham into her jacket pocket before breakfast, but said nothing. Guilt has its own blindfold. And so the secret remained. Some days, Bronn wasn't there when she arrived, but she waited. Always. She hummed to herself and held her hands in her lap, waited with the kind of patience only children and animals understand, that unwavering belief that those we love will come back, no matter how long it takes. And eventually, he always came. Sometimes with a limp, sometimes tired. But he came. She drew pictures of him in crayon, soft, lopsided shapes with floppy ears and brown fur. She hid them under her pillow or taped them to the inside of her toy chest. "I'm making a scrapbook," she told Bronn one afternoon, showing him a wrinkled drawing of the two of them holding hands, his paw in her tiny stick-figure fingers. "Don't worry," she added seriously. "I won't tell Mommy." Bronn blinked, and in that blink she understood something. He trusted her. He knew her. And maybe that was more than grown-ups ever bothered to do. One morning, as the wind shifted and bees began to stir in the honeysuckle vines, Lyla sat near the stump and whispered, "If you ever need me, you come find me. Okay?" Bronn's ears flicked. She placed a flat, shiny rock beside him, heart-shaped, faintly pink. "A promise," she said, "for when things get scary." He touched it with his nose. She smiled. And so the weeks passed, the secret held, until one terrible day, when a hive would fall, and a scream would echo, and a dog would drag a girl's limp body into the street. Only then would the world begin to see what Lyla already knew. That Bronn wasn't a monster. He was her protector, her secret, her defiance in the quiet. And love, when it's brave enough, doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just waits, and listens, and stays. The morning was unremarkable. Blue sky, no breeze, sunlight filtering through the lace curtains like warm fingers. Joanna stood barefoot in the kitchen, nursing her third coffee, the kind made out of habit, not need. She wore yesterday's shirt, hair loosely tied, a to-do list half-checked on the counter. Lyla sat at the kitchen table, crayons scattered like fallen petals. She hummed tunelessly, tongue poking from the corner of her mouth, entirely absorbed. Joanna smiled. It was one of those rare moments, still, quiet, where nothing felt wrong. The drawing took shape slowly. Crooked house, puffy tree, and something that looked suspiciously like a four-legged brown lump next to a stick-figure girl. Lyla leaned forward, whispering as she colored. "You can be here now. Mommy said it's safe." The brown lump got a tail. The phone rang. Joanna blinked, startled from her trance. She grabbed it quickly before it could wake the dog sleeping on the porch outside. "Hello?" A voice, chipper, professional, filled the line. It was Miss Clarice from the preschool. "Yes, we just had a question about Lila's application for fall. We noticed one of the medical fields." Joanna walked toward the hallway, hand cupped over her other ear. "Oh, the allergy form?" "Yes, she has a bee allergy. Severe, but she's never been stung before. We carry the EpiPen everywhere. No, she's never out of sight, I promise." She was out of sight. The chair scraped, not loudly, not even urgently. Just enough to go unnoticed beneath administrative small talk and the hum of the refrigerator. Tiny, bare feet padded across tile. One hand clutched a crayon, the other curled around a cracker from the counter. The back door hadn't been latched properly. It creaked open. The swing was slow, almost gentle, like the wind had pulled it. But there was no wind. Just a girl, drawn by a pull stronger than rules. The garden whispered. It always did. The weeds danced like fairies when you walked fast enough. The ivy-covered shed waited like a secret castle. The stump, the one with the little heart-shaped stone tucked behind it, gleamed faintly in the morning dew. Lyla stepped into it all like she belonged, because in her mind, she did. Back inside, Joanna laughed politely into the phone. "No, she's not in any daycare right now. Just home with me until summer's over. It's been good for her. Lots of art. She talks to herself more, but I think that's just being an only child." She turned, glancing toward the table. The crayon was still rolling slowly across the wood. The chair was empty. Her breath caught. "Hold on," she said quickly. "I'll have to call you back." She dropped the phone, rushed to the back door. The screen banged open. "Lyla?" Her voice cracked through the garden like a firework. No answer. She sprinted toward the hedges, the grass wet against her calves, heart slamming against her ribs. "Lyla!" The weeds shifted slightly. Nothing else moved. Lyla knelt by the stump, brushing dew from its rim. She placed the cracker beside the tiny pebble shrine. Her voice was soft. "I brought your favorite." There was a buzzing sound, faint at first, like static. She paused, looked toward the base of the stump. A soft hum stirred the air. She leaned closer. And then the sound sharpened. Louder. Angrier. The hole she reached toward was pulsing. Alive. She saw it just a second too late. Back at the door, Joanna's scream shattered the silence. "Lyla, come back here!" But the girl had already extended her hand into the stump. One sting, then two, then an explosion of wings and fury. Lyla screamed. It was shrill, wild, the kind of scream that curdled something deep inside the chest. She swatted blindly. Bees clung to her arm, her neck. Her little legs tripped in panic. She tumbled backward onto the stones. The garden was alive now, not with magic, not with fairy tales, but with chaos. And somewhere in the thickets eyes snapped open. Bronn. He'd been resting, ribs tight, heart dull. But that scream, her scream, cut through the fog. He bolted up, pain forgotten, blood rushing. Through weeds and nettles he ran. By the time Joanna reached the far end of the garden, she saw it, a storm of bees, a tiny figure crumpled on the ground, and a shadow, massive, moving, crashing through the wild. Bronn, her legs buckled. No, no, oh God! The dog reached the girl first, circling her, sniffing her face, her chest. Then, with a desperate growl, Bronn took hold of her shirt sleeve, gently, carefully, and began to drag. Joanna screamed louder, ran harder. "Leave her alone!" But Bronn didn't stop, and neither did the buzzing. The morning light shifted as Lyla stepped through the gap in the hedge, that secret part of the yard where the air always felt cooler, thicker, older. Here, the garden changed. It stopped being a backyard and became a world. The buzzing was faint at first, just a murmur beneath the songs of sparrows and the soft crunch of her bare feet on moss-covered stone. She didn't hear it, not truly. Her eyes were fixed on the fairy stump. It waited like it always had, knotted, hollow, with that little heart-shaped rock tucked beneath a root like an invitation. Lila's breath caught. She'd never come this far alone. But today felt different. The air smelled sweeter, and she missed him. Bronn. Maybe he'd be waiting near the stump like he used to, tail thumping just once like a secret handshake. She crouched beside the stump, pressed her cheek to the bark, whispered, "I'm back." No answer. She reached into the pocket of her pajamas and pulled out a wrinkled cracker, the kind with peanut butter in the middle. Bronn had always loved those. She broke it in half and placed it gently near the edge of the hollow. Then she peered inside. Darkness. Soft earth. A little curl of leaf. And something else. Movement. She blinked. Leaned closer. A faint shimmer. Gold on black. More than one. Her tiny hand reached in. She didn't feel the warning tremble of the stump, didn't hear the vibration shift from murmur to alarm. The bees had made a home deep inside the hollow. And now her fingers brushed the edge of their hive. One sting, then another, then a burst. The hive exploded in a whirlwind of rage and wings. Lyla screamed, a raw primal sound that had no shape, just terror. She stumbled backward, swatting wildly, tiny arms flailing. Bees clung to her neck, her cheeks, her bare arms. She fell. Hard. The side of her head struck the edge of a root. The world tilted, then dimmed. Her breathing changed, fast, shallow. Eyes wide and dazed, she gasped, her lips already beginning to swell. One more sting landed near her temple. Then everything slowed. And somewhere, not far but not near enough, Bronn stirred. His body still ached from yesterday's wounds, the stones they'd thrown, the hours hiding under the rusted shed. But he heard it. Her voice. Not the laugh. Not the whisper. A scream. Then silence. He didn't think. Didn't care that his leg dragged. Didn't care that his side was bleeding again. He ran, weaving through tall grass, crashing through tangled brush. Eyes locked on the sound he couldn't unhear, the one he'd sworn to protect. Lila's body lay curled like a fallen doll at the base of the stump, crayons still tucked behind her ear, the peanut butter cracker crushed in the grass. And bees, so many, swarming above her, landing, lifting again. She wasn't screaming now, she wasn't moving. Bronn growled, a sound low and full of fury. He lunged at the air, teeth snapping, swatting with his paws like a wild thing. Bees stung him too, the side of his face, his eyes, the raw patch on his back. But he didn't stop. He circled her once, then twice. Nose pressed to her chest. No breath, barely a pulse. His ears twitched. A memory. A soldier's voice. "Go get her, Bronn. Don't you leave her." Another time, another girl. And he had failed. Not this time. He bit gently at her shirt sleeve, tugged, dead weight. He tried again, one paw forward, then the next, inch by inch. He dragged her away from the hive, out of the shadow of the stump, across rocks that scraped her legs, through weeds that clung to her clothes. He never let go. His breaths were ragged now, the stings were swelling, his vision dimming, but she was still in his mouth, and she was still warm, and that meant she could still be saved. The sun climbed higher. The back porch came into view, and far behind them, the ferry stump stood quiet again. Its secret had been kept too long. Bronn had never known how heavy a child could be until her silence made every pound unbearable. Lyla didn't move. Her limbs were limp, her head lolled unnaturally. The soft sounds she used to hum, gone. Her fingers, once sticky with crackers and secrets, now curled in on themselves like dry leaves. Bronn circled her once, then twice. He sniffed at her cheek, licked the corner of her mouth, whimpered softly. Nothing. The smell of bees still lingered in the air. So did the stings, sharp, hot, burning into his shoulders and face. But none of it mattered, because she wasn't breathing right, because she was his. Something inside him kicked loose. A memory, buried deep. It wasn't this garden. It wasn't this child. But it was a girl. And it was night. And there was screaming. And blood. And a man shouting his name, not in command, but in heartbreak. He'd run too slow then. He'd hesitated. And she'd never come back. Bronn stepped closer, nudged Lyla again. A tiny wheeze, sharp and hollow, slipped from her throat. Still alive, still savable. The old instinct flared. He bit gently into the soft cotton of her sleeve, tugged. She barely budged. He planted his paws, dug in, pulled harder. The effort ripped a fresh ache through his side, reopening the scab on his ribs. Blood darkened the white of her pajama leg as it brushed his wound. He didn't stop, inch by inch. Bronn dragged her, through tall weeds that tugged back, over scattered stones and sun-baked earth, one paw forward, then the next. Her body left a shallow trail behind them. Crushed grass, streaked dirt, fallen petals. And still her chest fluttered like a bird trapped in a glass jar. The garden was bigger than it had ever felt before. Bronn's vision blurred at the edges. Heat pressed in. Blood from his head wound matted over his right eye. He limped harder now, back leg barely lifting. But he pressed on, because the porch was getting closer, because the fence was ahead, because the road where the humans were was just beyond that. He knew. They could help. He couldn't. Not anymore. They reached the fence. A low, broken slat near the back, the one Lyla always crawled under, the one she called the ferry gate. Bronn paused, sniffed at her face, still no sound, still the wrong kind of stillness. He dropped down, pressed his chest against the dirt and pulled her beside him. His body shuddered from pain and heat. But he pushed, crawled, tugged her through. The wood scraped her skin. His, too. But it was working. They were out. Now came the street, and with it, voices. Somewhere in the distance, laughter, a radio, a lawn-mower buzzing, normal sounds, peaceful sounds. None of them knew that a little girl was dying, that the only one trying to save her was a bleeding, limping dog no one had wanted. Bronn barked. Once. It cracked the air like a gunshot. No one came. So he barked again, louder, more desperate. Then he pulled. One more time. Her foot bumped the curb. He dragged her onto the pavement. Cars were parked along the sidewalk. Somewhere a screen door creaked. A woman shouted to her kid. Still, no one looked. No one saw. Not yet. Bronn's legs buckled. He collapsed beside her. Blood pooled beneath his side. He pressed his nose to her hand. No movement. So he did the only thing left inside him. He howled. Not loud, not long, but raw, cracked and hoarse and heart-shattering. A sound not of rage, not even pain, but of pleading. Someone, please, she's still alive. And this time, the world heard. A head turned, a door opened, feet came running, gasps, screams, phones raised, more screaming, "It's attacking her!" Someone reached for a rock. Bronn didn't move, didn't growl, didn't leave. He lay with his nose against Lyla's wrist, eyes locked forward, waiting for someone, anyone, to understand what he already knew. She didn't have long, and he wouldn't let her go alone. The sun was high and ruthless, casting sharp shadows across Oakridge Hill. Bronn staggered from the alley's edge, paws slipping slightly on the cracked pavement. His coat was matted with dirt, sweat, and blood, his own and Lyla's. Dust clung to every breath he exhaled. Behind him, the garden gate still swung on its rusted hinge, the only witness to the fight he'd just won. Against bees, against fear, against the weight of a child slowly slipping away. And now, he was here, out in the open, with her. Lyla's small, pale arm dragged alongside the curb. Her head lolled over his foreleg. Her lips had turned the color of twilight. He didn't know what death was, not in words, but he could smell it. It was getting close. Across the street, Mrs. Calloway was watering begonias when she saw the silhouette, big, hulking, coated in something dark, emerge from the side alley. She squinted past the haze of her sun hat. Then she screamed, "Oh, my God! It's got a child! The dog's got a child!" The watering can dropped with a clang. Water splashed the concrete. Someone else ran out from a house in slippers. A delivery man froze on the sidewalk, dropping his box. And then the voice came, sharp, high-pitched, loaded with panic. "It's killing her!" Chaos broke like a fever. A man grabbed a broom from his porch. A teen bent down for a rock. Two kids ran behind a minivan, yelling for their mom. Phones were out, some recorded, some dialed. But none understood, because all they saw was blood and teeth and a limp little girl in the jaws of what looked like a beast. Bronn didn't look at them, didn't flinch, didn't run. He lowered himself carefully to the sidewalk, let Lyla's body rest fully on the warm concrete. Then, slow, deliberate, he stepped over her, not to leave, but to shield, one paw beside her ribs, one beside her head. He stood between her and the mob, body shaking, head down. A rock clattered against the pavement, inches from his hind leg. He didn't move. Another hit his side. He growled, low, warning, but didn't strike back. His eyes flicked toward Lyla. Still no breath, still no sound, so he stood his ground. "Someone call animal control. Call the police. Do something. Is she even alive?" The street buzzed like the hive he'd barely escaped. Someone stepped forward, a man in a ball cap, holding a metal bat. "Get away from her!" he shouted. Bronn let out a single bark, short, deep, and final. It wasn't aggression. It was a line. "You will not pass." The man hesitated, took one step back. Then tires screeched. A tan sedan pulled into the street at an angle, nearly hitting the curb. The driver door flew open, and Dr. Ira Bennett stepped out. "Move!" he roared, holding his medical bag like a weapon. No one had ever heard Ira shout before. He was the quiet kind eyes, slow words. But this voice carried weight, authority, urgency. The crowd parted, stunned. He ran to the girl, dropped to his knees, didn't hesitate. He didn't look at Bronn, didn't flinch at the blood, didn't ask permission. He pressed 2 fingers to Lyla's neck, then peeled back an eyelid. His expression changed in an instant. "Anaphylaxis," he snapped. "Someone give me space. And water. Cold water now." Bronn stepped aside as Dr. Bennett moved in. His nose stayed near Lyla's cheek. Ira yanked an auto-injector from his bag, jabbed it into Lyla's thigh, counted under his breath. 5 seconds. 10. Bronn watched every tick, muscles tensed. Then a rasp. Lyla gasped. Not a breath, not a full inhale, but sound. Life. Ira exhaled. "She's breathing." He adjusted her airway, checked her pulse again. "We need an ambulance. Now." A woman finally spoke up from the crowd. "I called. They're coming. 3 minutes out." Dr. Bennett looked up, finally noticing the dog. Bronn's chest was heaving, his eyes fixed on Lyla. Blood still dripped from a wound on his brow. Flies hovered near his ear. But he was still. He was present. He was not what anyone thought. "I don't think," Ira began, standing slowly, "that this dog attacked her." The crowd murmured. "He didn't bite her," Ira said. "There are no puncture wounds, no lacerations, just stings everywhere." He glanced back at Bronn. "And he's covered in them, too." Someone dropped their phone. Another whispered, "Then why was he dragging her?" "Because," Ira said, kneeling beside them again, voice softer now, "she was dying, and he brought her to us." For a moment no one said anything. Even the air felt still. Then the faint wail of sirens grew from the south end of Oakridge Hill. The ambulance was coming, and for the first time, people stepped back, not in fear, but in understanding. A boy put the rock down. A woman lowered her phone. Mrs. Calloway, still clutching her sun hat, whispered, "Dear God, he saved her." Bronn didn't look at any of them. His gaze never left Lyla. When the EMTs arrived and lifted her gently onto a stretcher, he whined, once, a soft, broken note. Then with his last bit of strength he staggered after them. 3 steps, 4. But his legs gave out. He collapsed at the edge of the curb, breathing shallow, blood trailing down his paw. The crowd watched as he blinked slowly and disappeared into the tall weeds behind the trees. The sirens faded behind them, swallowed by the trees and distance. And yet the street remained frozen, as if the moment hadn't caught up to reality yet. Bronn was gone, limped into the brush like a wounded shadow, but the echo of his growl still hovered in the air. Dr. Ira Bennett stood in the middle of the road, his shirt stained with sweat, his hands still trembling slightly from the adrenaline. Around him the crowd lingered in an uneasy hush, like children waiting to be scolded, except no one knew who had been wrong, or if they all had. "I want to be very clear," Ira said, rising slowly to his feet. His voice was calm now, but there was something in it, something steady and unshakable, that quieted the last whispers. "That dog didn't attack her." A man scoffed. "Didn't attack her? You saw the blood? He dragged that girl down the street like a rag doll." "He dragged her," Ira repeated, "because she was unconscious, because she couldn't breathe, and because no one else knew where she was." He looked out over the faces, some ashamed, some skeptical, a few defiant. Lyla was stung by something, probably bees. She had a severe anaphylactic reaction. Her throat was closing. Her pulse was dropping. If that dog hadn't brought her out when he did— He cut himself off, took a breath. She wouldn't have made it. Mrs. Calloway's lips parted. She clutched the edges of her hat tighter, as if trying to brace herself against truth. Someone whispered, "But what about the bite marks?" "There weren't any," Ira said sharply. "No teeth wounds. No tearing. Her shirt had some dirt, yes, but her skin was untouched." "But he was covered in blood." "His own," Ira replied. "From a gash over his eye. Likely from a thrown rock. Maybe even glass. I don't know yet." A heavy silence stretched over the group. Then a voice from the back, male, young, uncertain, asked the question everyone else was trying not to. Then, "What kind of dog does something like that?" Ira turned. His eyes softened, but only slightly. "The kind that remembers. The kind that still chooses to help, even when it's been forgotten, abandoned, or hurt." He paused. "Let that sit," and then added more quietly, "The kind we don't deserve." No one spoke. For a moment the world was just the soft buzz of summer heat and the faint shimmer of pavement. Then a woman stepped forward, hair gray, glasses low on her nose. She held up her phone. The image on the screen was paused mid-frame. Bronn, standing over Lyla, shielding her. I recorded it," she said. "I thought he was attacking too at first, but when I watched it back—" Her voice broke. "He wasn't growling at her. He was growling at us." Ira nodded slowly, and in that simple motion the tide shifted. "Not entirely. Not for everyone. But enough. Enough for a few to lower their weapons, for others to look down, suddenly interested in the cracks on the sidewalk." Someone muttered, "I threw a rock. God! I thought—" Another added, "My kid's in her class. I didn't even recognize her face. She looked so blue." And Mrs. Calloway whispered again, "He was trying to save her." But not everyone was convinced. A man near the edge of the crowd crossed his arms. "Hero or not, he's still dangerous. That was a German Shepherd, yeah? Those dogs don't just change. What if next time it is a bite? What if he goes after another kid?" Ira met his gaze directly. "He didn't go after anyone today. He went toward help. There's a difference." The man looked away, but didn't speak again. A few feet behind, a police cruiser pulled in. Officer Donna Reed stepped out, scanning the scene. She was young, but carried herself like someone who'd had to learn fast. She spotted Ira and nodded. "What's the situation?" she asked, glancing toward the last direction Bronn had gone. "We had a misunderstanding," Ira replied. "The child is stable, en route to County General. The dog," he hesitated, "is a hero, but he's injured and scared." Donna frowned. "Animal control's en route." "Call them off," Ira said. "At least for now. He's not aggressive, just wounded. He needs a vet, not a tranquilizer dart." She studied him for a long second, then pulled her radio and began speaking into it. As the crowd began to disperse, some in groups, others in heavy, silent pairs, Ira stood in place, watching the spot where Bronn had disappeared into the woods, not as a vet, not even as a doctor, but as a man who had just seen something few ever did, something raw, something ancient, something right. He knelt and picked up a rock from the ground. Blood still stained one side of it. He placed it gently in the grass. Then he said to no one and to everyone, "I hope, if I'm ever lost like that, something finds me too." The ambulance doors slammed shut with a hollow finality, cutting off the last glimpse of Lyla's small frame. Inside, her chest rose shallowly under a tangle of wires and blankets. Joanna clung to her daughter's hand like it was the only thing anchoring her to earth. The engine roared, sirens ignited. Then it was gone, disappearing down Oakridge Hill, swallowed by dust, exhaust, and prayer. And Bronn stood there, still, panting, bleeding, alone. He had limped behind the ambulance for as far as he could, each step jarring his right leg. Blood from the gash above his eye had matted the fur around his temple. Dirt clung to his coat. His tongue lolled out, dry, cracked, but his gaze, still locked on the spot where the ambulance had vanished, did not break. A few neighbors lingered near their porches, hushed. A mother ushered her toddler inside. A man holding a rake shifted awkwardly, unsure whether to approach or pretend none of this had happened. Bronn tried to take another step. Just one. His paw buckled beneath him. He dropped, not with a yelp, not with defiance, just surrender. He collapsed near the base of a bush-tall grass brushing against his side, half hidden from the street. His flanks heaved, the rhythmic rise and fall of loyalty and pain. He didn't cry. He didn't whimper. But his ears twitched every few seconds, searching for the sound of sirens that were no longer coming back. "Got eyes on him," a voice crackled from a radio. Animal control. Two officers moved up the sidewalk now, one younger, with nervous eyes. The other older, face set in professional detachment. They had looped poles ready, tranquilizer rifles slung over the shoulder. "He's wounded," one said. "We should go non-lethal, but be ready." The crowd hadn't truly dispersed. Not really. Some peered through blinds, others watched from cars, engines idling, as if the street itself had become a theater stage, and everyone had paid for a front-row seat to either redemption or ruin. Officer Donna Reed appeared near the curb, her hand raised. "Hold position," she said firmly. "No rush." "We don't know if he'll bolt." "He's not running," Donna said, voice flat. "He's waiting." "For what?" Donna didn't answer, because she wasn't sure. Bronn's breath hitched. A faint sound, barely audible, broke through the static of heat and footsteps. A child's voice, Lyla's, echoing not in reality, but in memory. "It's okay, Bronn. You can lay down now. I'll stay." He lifted his head just slightly. His ears swiveled once more. Then he pushed himself up. A gasp rippled through the nearest cluster of onlookers. He didn't charge, he didn't growl. He simply turned like a soldier, dismissed from duty, and vanished. One limping step at a time, deeper into the green, into the thick shadows beneath the trees. Not running, not hiding, just leaving. Like something that knew it had done all it could, but had no place left in this world to rest. By the time the officers reached the bushes, the only thing left was a single drop of blood on a leaf. Already drying, Donna stared at it for a long time. Then she holstered her radio. "Cancel the perimeter," she said quietly. "He's gone." Across the street, Mrs. Calloway sat down slowly on her front step. Her hands trembled. She wiped her eyes beneath her glasses. "We drove him out," she whispered, "and he was the only one who knew." No one corrected her. No one dared. Dr. Ira Bennett emerged from the house where he'd washed up. His white coat was streaked with sweat and dust. He carried a small first aid kit and a leash that would never be used. Too late. He looked around. "Where is he?" Donna shook her head. "He left." Ira's eyes closed briefly. "Of course he did." The sun beat down harder now, shadows shrinking. The street looked normal again, a dog's prints already softening in the dust. The world, eager to forget. But some didn't. Some wouldn't. Especially not the little girl in the ambulance who, at that moment, stirred beneath an oxygen mask and whispered a name no one else yet understood. Bronn. The waiting room smelled like overused sanitizer and worry. Pale walls, beige chairs, a ticking clock that seemed to slow with every second. No one spoke. No one made eye contact. Robert sat hunched forward, elbows on knees, hands locked together like he was holding something back or trying not to fall apart. His eyes hadn't left the tiled floor since he walked in. He had driven there without remembering the drive. 35 in a 50. Missed a red light. Didn't care. He had only heard Joanna's voice on the phone, cracking with disbelief. "It wasn't an attack, Robert. It was an allergic reaction." He saved her. He. The word echoed louder than the news itself. Bronn. Or, back then, Duke. The hospital doors hissed open. Nurse footsteps. Muffled instructions. Nothing about Lyla's condition yet. Robert's hands began to shake. He didn't realize until he felt his wedding ring rattle against the other knuckle. He took it off, rolled it between his fingers. It felt like it belonged to someone better, someone braver, someone who hadn't let a dog walk out of their daughter's life just because things got too hard. Dr. Ira Bennett stepped into the room. Joanna stood immediately. "Is she—" "She's stable," he said. "Still groggy, but she'll be okay." Joanna burst into tears. Robert exhaled so sharply it startled the man next to him. "But," Ira added, turning to Robert, "we need to talk about that dog." Robert nodded. Quiet. Ready. They stepped into a side corridor where the walls felt narrower. Dr. Bennett spoke plainly. "Whatever you think happened out there, it wasn't an attack. I found no puncture wounds, no bite marks, no torn tissue. Her shirt sleeve was wet. Yes, but that's how he was pulling her. She was in full-blown anaphylactic shock. He bought her the minutes she needed." Robert's mouth was dry. He couldn't speak. He could only nod. "Who is he?" Ira asked. Robert looked away. The hallway walls blurred slightly. His vision tunneled, not from emotion, but memory. Flashback. Years ago, a younger Robert sat on a porch swing. His father, retired canine handler, now wheelchair-bound, gently patted the broad head of a young German shepherd sitting at his feet. "That's Duke," the old man said. "Born with something in his chest. Heart too big for a working dog, but loyal like nothing I've ever seen." Robert smiled. "You're keeping him?" "I'm listening to him. He's the kind that waits for you to get it right. That's rare." "Present." Robert blinked back tears. "He was my father's," he said at last. "After Dad passed, Duke Bronn came to live with us, but he wasn't like other dogs. He guarded too much, slept by Lila's crib, growled if anyone raised their voice. Joanna didn't trust him, and so I told her I rehomed him." Dr. Bennett's face didn't move. "But I didn't," Robert whispered. "One night, I opened the back gate. He looked at me like he knew. Like he wasn't even mad, just disappointed. I said I was sorry. Then I let him go." His voice cracked then, a sharp, fragile break in the middle of the sentence. "I left him out there." He rubbed his hands over his face, trying to force the guilt down, but it stayed tight in his chest, acidic in his throat. "I thought I was protecting our family, but he was family too." Joanna returned from the ICU wing. Her expression was unreadable, but her hands trembled when she sat beside Robert. She didn't speak right away. Then softly, "Lyla asked for him." Robert closed his eyes. She said his name right after waking. Bronn. Just like that. No fear, no hesitation. He couldn't breathe for a moment. "I lied to both of you," he said, his voice rough. Joanna didn't argue, but she didn't move away either. "Do you think he's still out there?" she asked. "He was there today," Dr. Bennett said. "He tried to follow the ambulance." Robert pressed his palms into his eyes. "I have to find him." From the corner of the room, the clock ticked past another minute. Joanna finally whispered, "Then go." Robert stood slowly. The ache in his legs was nothing compared to the one in his chest. As he turned to leave, Joanna asked, "Why did you name him Bronn?" Robert paused, gave a tired smile. Lyla couldn't pronounce Duke. One day she just said Bronn, and it stuck. Joanna didn't smile back, but her voice was softer now. "Then bring Bronn home." The steady beeping of monitors was the only sound in the room. Dim light poured through the blinds, casting long shadows across the floor. A vase of wilting flowers sat untouched by the windowsill. In the hospital bed, beneath thin white sheets, Lyla stirred. Joanna was asleep in the corner chair, arms folded, face tucked into her shoulder like she was trying to shrink into herself. Her exhaustion had finally overtaken her after hours of pacing, of crying silently in bathrooms, of answering the same question from doctors. Does she have any known allergies? It hadn't mattered. The answer had come too late. But now, something small changed. A twitch in Lila's fingers, a flutter of her lashes. Joanna bolted upright. "Lyla?" The little girl's eyes blinked open slowly, dazed and glassy, pupils slow to adjust. Her breathing was shallow but no longer gasping. She looked confused, like someone waking up from a dream that didn't end the way it should have. Joanna stood, inching closer to the bed. "Sweetheart, you're okay. You're safe." Lyla didn't respond at first. Her lips parted, dry and pale. She blinked again. Then her voice barely more than a breath escaped. "Where's Bronn?" Joanna froze. "What did you say?" "Bronn," Lyla repeated, slightly stronger. "He was there. He brought me." Joanna's heart stuttered. She sat slowly on the edge of the bed, brushing hair from her daughter's forehead. "Honey, how do you know that name?" Lyla looked up at her mother, confusion slipping into concern. "He's my dog. I visit him." Joanna blinked. "What?" "In the garden," Lyla whispered. "The fairy house, behind the vines." It was as if the air had been punched from Joanna's lungs. The garden, the one they'd let grow wild after Bronn, was rehomed. The same place Joanna refused to weed because she said it reminded her of chaos, of overgrown things, of failure. She'd assumed it had been forgotten, but Lyla had been going there, often. "How long?" Joanna's voice came out sharp, then softened. "How long have you been seeing him?" Lyla looked away. "I don't know, long time. He waits for me." A tear rolled down Joanna's cheek before she even noticed it. She remembered all the days she thought Lyla was just playing quietly under the porch or sketching by the fence. All those peaceful afternoons when she believed, hoped that her daughter was finally settling down after losing her grandfather. But she hadn't been alone. "You weren't afraid of him?" Joanna asked, voice cracking. Lyla shook her head. "He listens. Better than people." Joanna stood and walked slowly toward the window, the blinds still filtering that cold hospital light across the floor. Her own thoughts were crashing over her now, memories she'd buried too quickly. The way Bronn used to stand between her and the crib at night. The way he would flinch at loud voices, not bark. The way he laid beside Robert's father's bed until the last breath left his chest. She thought she was protecting Lyla from a dangerous animal. But who had she really been trying to protect? Herself? Her illusion of control? Her fear of losing another piece of family? Behind her, Lyla spoke again. "He got hurt, Mommy." Joanna turned. "What do you mean?" "He was bleeding. When he dragged me, I saw rocks. They hit him." Joanna couldn't breathe. Her hands trembled. "Is he okay?" Lyla asked, smaller now. "They yelled at him, like he was bad." Joanna returned to the bed and pulled her daughter gently into her arms. "He's not bad," she whispered into the girl's hair. "He's the best thing we never understood." The door creaked open. Robert stood there, eyes bloodshot, face pale. "She's awake," Joanna said softly, not looking up. "I know," he replied. "I heard her." He stepped inside and sat on the other side of Lila's bed, his hand brushing her arm gently. "She remembers everything," Joanna murmured. "She's been seeing him all this time." Robert nodded, gaze fixed on his daughter. He waited. For her. For us. Joanna looked up at him. "I thought I was keeping her safe," she said. "I thought I was protecting her from him. But she was the one protecting him, all along." Robert didn't respond. He didn't need to. They both knew now. Lila's eyelids began to droop again, exhaustion pulling her under like waves. But before she faded back into sleep, her voice rose one more time. "Promise me you'll find him." Joanna kissed her forehead. "We will," she said. "I swear." And for the first time in what felt like years, Joanna meant it. Not as an obligation, not as penance, but as a promise to the dog who had been waiting behind the vines. The woods behind the Oakridge subdivision had once been a boyhood playground for Robert. He knew the way the light hit the tall oaks in the early evening, how the dry pine needles crunched beneath your boots, and which log always had a raccoon hiding under it. But tonight, it felt like another country foreign, heavy and humming with something unsaid. Robert tightened the beam on his flashlight and stepped over a rotting branch. The air was cooler now. The hysteria of the day had quieted, but not the ache in his chest. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Bronn's face again, bloodied, trembling, still refusing to drop Lyla. And not to harm her, but to save her, even in the face of fists, even through stones. He had let that dog go once. He wouldn't do it again. "Over here," called Officer Donna Reed, brushing past a thicket with her gloved hands. Her voice was calm, measured, the kind that belonged to someone who had seen worse but never let it break her. She'd been off duty when she saw the footage. Volunteer firefighters' body cam had captured just enough. Bronn standing between Lyla and chaos, not attacking, but protecting. She believed it now. She'd come without being asked. "I've got paw prints. Could be old," she added, crouching. Robert joined her, holding a worn Ziploc bag in one hand inside, the last of Bronn's favorite training treats. Liver-flavored, bought 3 years ago, kept in the glove box like guilt. Donna glanced at it. "He'll know that smell, if he's still close." Robert gave a weak smile. "If he's still alive." Donna didn't answer. She rose and looked to the dark line of woods ahead. "Dogs like Bronn, they hide to heal, or die." Robert looked away. He shouldn't have had to do either. They pressed deeper into the brush. The sun had long dipped behind the hills, and the darkness had taken on a new texture, velvety, layered with cricket song and the occasional crackle of dry leaves. The flashlight beam trembled slightly in Robert's hand. "I should have fought harder," he said suddenly. "When Joanna said he had to go?" Donna gave him a glance but didn't speak. Confession needed space, not commentary. "He used to sleep on my dad's feet," Robert continued. "Wouldn't move for anything. After Dad died, Bronn stopped eating. Joanna thought it was just the stress. But I knew." He stepped over a fallen branch, letting the memories guide his next words. "I told her he got adopted. That's the lie I chose. Easier than a fight. Easier than the truth." Donna paused. "Some lies don't disappear. They wait." Robert nodded. "Yeah. And sometimes they bleed in the street holding your kid." Up ahead, the trees thinned into a clearing, an old maintenance shed used decades ago by park rangers. The roof sagged. One window was broken, its shards catching faint moonlight like teeth. Donna raised a hand. "Wait!" Robert froze. His breath hitched. There was a sound. Low, rasping. Not quite a growl, but not a whimper either. Robert stepped forward, slowly. No flashlight now. Just voice. "Bronn?" Another rustle. "Hey, buddy. It's me." A shadow moved near the corner of the shed. Limps, halts, limps again. Then 2 eyes, glowing faintly in the dark. Robert swallowed. "I brought your treats," he said, voice cracking. "And your girl. She made it. You saved her." Bronn didn't move. His body was taut, tail tucked, ears low. But his eyes, they were searching. Donna knelt beside Robert. "Give him space," she whispered. "Let him remember." Robert lowered the treat bag slowly, set it on the grass, then dropped to his knees. "You waited in the cold for me," he whispered, barely audible. "Now I'm here. I'm not leaving." For a long minute the only sound was wind in the leaves. Then softly, like a leaf brushing earth, Bronn took one step forward, then another. He didn't run into Robert's arms. He simply lowered his head and pressed it just slightly against Robert's knee, the way he used to when words weren't needed. And Robert broke. Tears fell, unfiltered and full. He reached out slowly, cupped Bronn's blood-matted head in both hands. "I'm sorry," he said. "I was supposed to protect you." Behind them, Donna turned her gaze to the trees, giving them privacy. When she spoke again, it was with calm certainty. "We need to get him to the vet. Now." Robert nodded. "Let's bring him home." They wrapped Bronn in a blanket. His breathing was shallow. His paws were torn, but his eyes stayed open the whole ride to the animal hospital, looking out the window, toward the place he never stopped guarding, even when no one was watching. The old maintenance shed hadn't been touched in years. Its roof sagged under the weight of rot and ivy. Rust lined the door frame, and the padlock dangled broken, more a memory than security. In a forgotten corner of the county park, it crouched like a secret nobody wanted to remember. Except one. Inside, something stirred. Bronn lay in the corner, half curled against a wall lined with splintered boards. His fur clung to his ribs in matted tufts. One eye was swollen shut from where a stone had struck him. His flank rose and fell in uneven rhythm, each breath a labor, each twitch of muscle a protest. He had crawled here after the street, after the mob, after the ambulance, dragged his body between trees and silence until this ruin of a shelter opened like a grave, and he accepted it. This was where old things went to disappear, and he was tired of being seen wrong. Outside, flashlights cut across the tree line. The voices were lower now, less frantic, more determined. "We've got tracks," Donna Reed whispered into her radio, headed northwest from the road. Robert followed close behind her, flashlight trembling in his hand. The beams glanced off bark and grass, searching for anything. Fur, prints, a glint of eyes. He held something in his left hand. A leash, not for restraint, for memory. The faintest creak sounded from the shed door. Donna raised a hand, stopped, listened. Then a shuffle, a whimper so soft it could have been wind. Robert moved forward without thinking. "Bronn," he called, just above a whisper. No answer. He stepped closer. "It's me, Robert." Inside, Bronn tensed. That voice, it didn't come from a scream or a threat. It came from somewhere deep familiar and frayed, like an old blanket pulled from storage. His ears flicked, unsure. Then again, "Bronn, I know I don't deserve it, but I'm here. Please." The door groaned as Robert eased it open. The smell of mildew and old rust hit first. Then came the quiet, heavy and breathless. He scanned the shadows, and there, barely visible, two amber eyes reflecting his beam, sunken but watching. "Bronn." He dropped the leash. He got on his knees. No commands, no reaching, just presence. "I lied," Robert whispered. "I let you go because I was scared. I told Joanna you got adopted. I told myself you'd be better off." He swallowed. "But I was wrong, and I never stopped regretting it." Bronn didn't move, but his tail twitched once. Robert saw it. He kept talking. "She misses you, Lyla. She never stopped. She found you again, didn't she?" just like you found her." He paused, voice breaking. "And I need you to let me fix this. Just one more chance." For a moment the world held its breath. Then Bronn shifted, one paw forward, then another. He limped, slow, wary, every step deliberate, until his nose touched Robert's knee and stayed. Robert's voice crumbled. "Oh, God," he breathed. "You remember." He reached up, not to pet, but to rest his forehead against the dog's. "Thank you for not forgetting me." Donna stepped forward now, silent. She saw the way Bronn leaned into Robert, as if placing a final ounce of faith in a man who had once failed him. She lowered her radio. "We don't need the tranquilizers." Minutes later they emerged from the woods. Robert held Bronn's leash, but the dog walked without its step by fragile step. Blood matted his fur, but he moved with quiet resolve, not as a threat, not as a stray, but as something returning. Home wasn't a place. It was a voice that finally said, "I'm sorry." Bronn stood motionless at the edge of the trees, the moonlight silvering his battered coat. His legs trembled, and each breath came with a rasp. But his eyes, those worn, golden eyes, never left Robert. There was no bark, no growl, just a silence so thick it pressed into the chest, demanding reverence. Donna Reed stood a few feet behind, arms crossed but face softening. No radio clicks, no commands. Even the wind seemed to hold itself back, not daring to interrupt what was about to unfold. Robert remained still, crouched in the dirt. His knees ached, but he didn't care. His fingers hung inches above the ground, palm open, shaking, not from fear, but from everything else. Shame, love, memory. "You remember me," he whispered again, voice barely carrying across the space between them. "After all this time, after what I did." For a moment, nothing moved. Then Bronn did. He didn't charge. He didn't rush. He limped, agonizing, deliberate steps over dry leaves and gravel. With every movement his body shuddered like it wanted to give in, but something else stronger than pain kept him upright. Something that said, "This is worth it." When Bronn finally reached Robert, he stopped. And then he lowered his head, gently, carefully. He pressed it into Robert's open palm. The contact was so soft, it felt like breath. Robert gasped. It wasn't just fur beneath his hand, it was weight, history, forgiveness, the warmth of a dog that should have hated him but didn't, the trust of an animal who had every reason to disappear into those woods and never look back, but chose not to. And Robert broke. His knees hit the ground hard, arms folded around Bronn's scarred neck. His forehead leaned into fur sticky with dried blood and dirt. "I'm sorry," he whispered, over and over, words crumbling between gasps. "I'm so sorry." Bronn didn't pull away, didn't flinch. He simply stood there, leaning all of himself into the man who had once let him go. It was not the kind of reunion that needed cheering. It was the kind that deserved silence. Behind them, Donna lowered her head. Even the woods seemed to bow. 15 minutes later, the patrol vehicle sped toward Millstone Veterinary Clinic, headlights cutting the dusk. Donna drove, eyes locked on the road. Robert sat in the back seat with Bronn curled beside him, half in his lap. The dog's breathing was shallow, his head twitching occasionally, but he stayed close, like he didn't want to be left again. Robert had taken off his jacket and wrapped it around Bronn's torso, trying to keep him warm. His hands never stopped moving, stroking the fur behind Bronn's ears, checking the pads of his paws, whispering soft words that made no sense except to a dog who needed to hear them. "You held on for her," Robert murmured. "You carried her out when no one else even knew she was gone." Bronn gave a faint, low sound, not a growl, but something softer, as if to say, "I would have done it again." When they arrived, the clinic doors flew open before the wheels even stopped. Dr. Tess Marlowe, called in after hours, rushed out with a gurney. She took one look at the dog in Robert's arms and didn't waste time on paperwork. "How long has he been like this?" she asked as they lifted Bronn onto the padded stretcher. "Since this afternoon," Robert said, voice hoarse. "He's got cuts, bruises, swelling on the flank. Might have taken a rock to the head. But more than that, he's barely standing. His heart's weak." Dr. Marlowe's brows furrowed. "Let's get him stabilized first. I'll run scans after fluids." As the doors shut behind them, Bronn's tail thumped once against the gurney rail. In the waiting room, Robert sat motionless, elbows on knees, hands clasped like a man in prayer. Not for redemption, but for time. He didn't want to ask the universe to undo the past. He just wanted enough hours to say what needed saying. It was 10:46 p.m. when Dr. Marlowe returned, gloves off, face serious. "He's stable, for now," she said. "But there's something I need to talk to you about." Robert stood slowly. "What is it?" She glanced through the glass toward the recovery room where Bronn lay. Machines hummed beside him. "He's got a significant heart murmur. Advanced dilation in the left ventricle. My guess? Cardiomyopathy. Likely worsened by extreme stress. What he went through today pushed him close to the edge." Robert blinked hard. "How long does he have?" "If he rests, if meds work, weeks, maybe months." Robert closed his eyes. Not to shut the truth out, but to hold it, to make space for it. Bronn had carried Lyla back from the brink. Now he stood at one himself, and all Robert could do was be there this time, without walking away. The fluorescent light buzzed above like a tired lullaby as Robert stepped into the recovery room. Bronn lay still on a padded mat near the window, hooked to a quiet IV drip. His chest rose and fell with deliberate effort, the rhythm just slightly off, too slow, too shallow. Bandages wrapped his front legs, and a soft cone lay unused beside him. But it was the eyes that pulled Robert down to the floor beside him. They were open, watching, tired, yes, but still holding on. Robert knelt, legs folding beneath him. "Hey," he whispered, his voice breaking on the syllable. "You stubborn, impossible, beautiful dog." Bronn's tail thumped once against the mat, just once. And that was enough. Robert reached out, brushing his hand across Bronn's forehead, smoothing the fur between his ears. "You remember that trail behind my dad's barn?" he murmured. "The one with the blackberry bushes and the broken fence post? You used to take off down it every morning like it was your mission." Bronn blinked slowly. "I used to follow you, just to make sure you didn't eat something stupid." Robert laughed gently. "But you always came back. Always." His hand paused. "I didn't," he added, the words barely audible. "I didn't come back for you." Outside the room, Dr. Marlowe stood with a clipboard. She didn't interrupt. She didn't have to. She knew the worst part of her job wasn't delivering the diagnosis. It was watching what it did to the ones left behind. Earlier that evening, she'd laid it out plainly for Robert. advanced dilated cardiomyopathy. Heart walls stretched thin, struggling to pump blood. Irregular rhythm, a condition likely congenital, but pushed to the brink by the trauma and exertion of dragging Lyla's small body through the brush, shielding her from panic and pain, holding on long enough to be seen. "He gave too much," she had said softly. "He gave everything." Back in the room, Robert's forehead rested against Bronn's paw. He was no longer trying to hold back the tears. "They said you've got weeks," he whispered. "Maybe months, if we're lucky." Bronn didn't move, but his eyes never left Robert's face. "You used to run laps around that old maple like it was your job. Chase dragonflies, bark at clouds," Robert continued. "You were supposed to get old with Lyla, grow slow and gray, sleep by the fireplace and complain about squirrels." He choked on the laugh that came next. "And instead, you carried her out of hell." A silence followed. Long, heavy. Then very gently, Bronn exhaled a low sound. Not a whimper, not quite a sigh, just a soft release, like wind leaving a tired tree. It felt like forgiveness, and it broke something in Robert that had been holding on too long. He cried, openly, not just from guilt, but from awe, because this wasn't just a dog. This was love in its rawest form. Minutes passed, and when Robert finally found his breath again, he sat up straighter, pressed a hand to Bronn's shoulder and said quietly, "You're never going to be alone again. I swear to you." Bronn's ear twitched. "That room we were fixing up for storage? It's yours now. We'll make it warm, quiet. Lyla'll visit. She's been asking for you." Robert's throat tightened again, but he kept going. "You gave her another shot at life, Bronn, and I'm going to give you the ending you deserved all along." Later that night, the clinic was quiet. Donna had gone home. The lights were dimmed, and Robert, after refusing to leave, sat in the recliner beside Bronn's mat, watching over him like a father might a sleeping child. In his lap, he held a faded photo. Bronn at 2 years old, big grin, paws in the air, tongue lolling sideways in front of a red barn. Robert had been smiling too young, sunburned, unaware of all the ways he'd one day fall short. But now he understood something different. Redemption doesn't come from erasing the past. It comes from choosing better now, even when it's almost too late, especially then. As midnight neared, Bronn stirred. His head shifted slightly, and his paw stretched out toward the edge of the mat. Robert caught it, held it, and in that still room, beneath that quiet light, man and dog sat in the wreckage of everything they had once lost, and began to build something new from it. The hospital room smelled of warm gauze and sleep. Rain ticked against the window as if the sky waited for an answer. Lyla stirred beneath pale blue sheets, a stuffed giraffe in her arm, IV line steady beside her. Joanna, hollow-eyed from worry, watched her daughter breathe. Then came Lyla's voice. "Mom?" Joanna jolted. "Lyla. Sweetheart." "I'm okay," Lyla whispered. "Can Bronn come home now?" Joanna hesitated. "Sweetheart, you've been through a lot." "I remember everything," Lyla said firmly. "He saved me." Joanna tried to reason. "He's unpredictable, dangerous. He's not just a dog. He's family." The word hit Joanna hard, stirring memories. Bronn chasing Lyla as a toddler, lying beside her during storms. And then the night they lost him. "I only wanted to protect you," Joanna whispered. "But you didn't ask me," Lyla said. A knock at the door. Robert entered, coffee in hand. "She asked about Bronn," Joanna said. "I saw him this morning, weak but holding on." "Can he come home?" Lyla pleaded. Joanna's fears fought against the truth. Bronn had saved Lyla. "If we do this, we do it right," Joanna said at last. "Together." Lyla nodded, pinky out. Joanna linked hers. That night they cleaned a room, set up blankets and a monitor knot for a baby, but for a hero waiting too long for home. In the quiet house, Joanna and Robert faced their grief and fear. "She almost died," Joanna said. "And she's alive because of him," Robert answered. They argued gently about risk, about love, about how fear had kept Bronn away. "He's dying," Joanna whispered. "I know," Robert said. "But he shouldn't die alone." Joanna touched an old photo of Lyla hugging Bronn, a memory of trust. "I don't know how to stop being afraid." "You don't have to," Robert said. "Just choose what you love more." That night, as Robert packed supplies, Joanna handed him Bronn's favorite towel. Bronn was coming home. They prepared the room, soft blankets, water bowl, pale blue curtains. Then came the sound of Bronn's steps, slow, uneven, but determined. Lyla rolled a worn tennis ball to him. He sniffed it. His tail shifted just once. Lyla hugged him gently. Bronn leaned in, eyes closing in peace. Joanna watched from the doorway, breathing just enough. Later she knelt beside him. "I was wrong," she whispered. "You were trying to protect her, even when we weren't." Her hand rested on his fur. Bronn sighed softly. "This is your room now," Joanna said. As she left, his tail tapped the floor. Once, then twice. Forgiveness, in its simplest form. In that room, something rare had bloomed. Not just shelter, but grace. The knock came just after 7:00 a.m. 3 firm taps that spoke of purpose. Robert opened the door to find Harold Wilkins. Broad, scarred and steady, wearing a faded military cap and a too-warm jacket. "Robert," Harold said, "I heard." Robert didn't have to ask how. Small towns talked fast. "The mutt's still alive?" Harold asked. "He has a name," Robert said wearily. "Bronn, the dog who saved your girl." Robert stepped aside. Harold entered. In the living room, Bronn lay near the window, weak but alert. As Harold approached, Bronn's ears tensed. No bark, no growl, just a small tail thump when Harold removed his cap and stood silently. "Damn," Harold muttered. "You really are like Max." On the porch, over black coffee, Harold spoke of Max, his canine in Iraq. Max had saved lives not just through action, but through his knowing gaze, his silent guidance. "I didn't trust Bronn at first," Harold admitted. "Thought he was one of the ones they broke too soon. I was wrong." Inside, Lyla peeked out. "Is that your friend?" she whispered. "Kind of," Robert said. "I don't do tea parties, kid," Harold grunted. "I wasn't going to ask," Lyla shot back. "Bronn likes me." Harold smirked. "He's got taste." Before leaving, Harold placed a worn canine handler patch on the porch. "Figured he earned it," he said. "Why now?" Robert asked. "Because good dogs die every day, never knowing they were good." Not again. The next morning, Harold arrived with a duffel bag of gear. Harness, lead, treats, a clicker, and an old photo of Mac's black fur, scarred snout, and wise eyes. "That kind of loyalty," Harold said softly, "never dies." Harold moved slowly, fitting Bronn with the harness, speaking low, steady words. Outside they took slow steps across the damp grass, Bronn trembling but determined. "He's doing it," Lyla whispered from the window. Days passed. Bronn learned to shift weight, respond to hand signals, accept touch. Harold taught him and them patience. "Therapy dogs don't have to be perfect," Harold told Lyla. "They just have to show up. And love people, especially when it hurts." At night, Harold sat quietly, Bronn at his feet, photo of Max nearby. "Didn't think I'd train another," he whispered. "Maybe I'm not training him. Maybe he's training me." Lyla brushed Bronn's fur slow and gentle, building trust stroke by stroke. Together they rewrote his instincts, not erased, just softened. She played sounds, doorbells, sirens. Bronn looked to her for permission before settling again. Each tiny victory was enormous. Joanna watched them from the porch, realizing, that's not fear out there. It's something stronger. Harold handed Lyla a small vest. "In training, comfort dog." "It's not official," he said, "but what matters is he's learning, and so are you." That night, Lyla whispered before sleep, "He's already ready. I think I am too." Joanna watched Bronn at the foot of the bed, no longer guarding from threat, but from loneliness. In the kitchen, Robert read Harold's notes. "A true therapy dog doesn't need to fix people, only remain with them as they fix themselves." Out on the porch, Bronn stood under the full moon. He leaned on his bad leg, but stood just the same. Behind him a little girl slept, one hand reaching down, waiting for him. The photo was never meant to go viral. It was taken by a local reporter who came by the house, expecting to find a snarling beast fit for a redemption story. But what he found instead stopped him cold. Lyla, in her sunflower dress, sat on the grass with a blanket. Bronn rested his head on her lap, half asleep, as morning light painted them in gold. Lyla wasn't smiling, just looking at him, and Bronn, eyes closed, looked as if he'd always belonged there. The reporter didn't ask for a pose. He just clicked the shutter. By the next day, the photo was everywhere. The Brookhaven Daily headline read, "From Mad Dog to Miracle, a girl's life saved by the very stray we feared." The internet spread it far and wide, pet forums, military pages, rescue groups. A foundation captioned it, "Some heroes wear fur." Emails poured in. A vet offered free checkups. A donor pledged Bronn's heart meds for life. A nonprofit offered to sponsor his therapy certification. A teacher wrote, 15 kids believe in second chances now." But what touched them most were the letters. "My dad was a K-9 officer. I never understood why he cried for his dog until now. I feared dogs all my life. This picture made me pause. Please tell Lyla bravery is quiet and true." Lyla didn't quite grasp viral, but she noticed the smiles, the waves, and the way people knew her name. One morning, Robert handed her 2 letters. From a girl in Texas. A drawing of Bronn with angel wings. From a soldier. "Your story brought my partner back to me for a moment. Thank you." Officer Donna Reed later brought a shadow box, the photo, article, and a plaque. "Bronn, service, sacrifice, second chances." Robert hung it near the fireplace. Joanna whispered, "We barely made it through those first days." Robert nodded. "But we're still here." Out in the yard, Bronn wore a blue vest. "Therapy dog in training. Please ask before petting." Despite his limp and tired eyes, there was a glow like something broken that had been chosen anyway. One quiet Saturday, Robert walked to the back garden, the place where it had all gone wrong, where Bronn had saved Lyla, and now he decided it was time to reclaim it. By noon, neighbors came, Harold with gloves, Officer Reed with cadets and tools, even the woman who'd thrown the first rock. Together they transformed the space. They cleared the vines, rebuilt the fence, planted flowers, set benches, and at the stump where Lyla had once reached for magic and found pain, they placed a plaque. Guardian's Park, in honor of Bronn, the dog who chose to protect, not punish. For those who fight without being asked, for those who forgive without being begged. Lyla arrived at sunset, Bronn beside her, tail wagging softly. She knelt at the stump, placed a crayon drawing of her and Bronn, the garden bursting with color, bees smiling, Bronn crowned like a king. The crowd cheered. "Not bad for a mutt with a bum ticker," Harold muttered. Robert smiled. He was always a king to her. At the dedication, the town gathered. Children held Guardian Bronn flags. Bronn appeared, slow but proud in his vest. Lyla cut the yellow ribbon as the mayor spoke of redemption and unity. "We dedicate this space not to a tragedy, but to a turning point." Afterward, as balloons rose and cupcakes appeared, Bronn stood still, weary but honored. Joanna saw the tired glaze in his eyes, stepped close, and Bronn leaned into her at last, at peace. Lyla placed a daisy crown on his head. "It's okay. You can sit now." Bronn obeyed. That evening, as the park emptied, Lyla sat beside him beneath the stump. She named every flower they'd planted: sunflower, lily, marigold, iris, hope. She whispered, "You're my best friend." Bronn blinked slowly, closed his eyes, and for a while the world was quiet. Not sad, just quiet. The vet's office was too quiet. Not the kind of silence that soothes, the kind that hums in your ears like grief is already in the walls. Joanna sat stiffly on the bench, arms wrapped around herself, her fingers still stained with dirt from the garden they'd planted days ago. Lyla refused to sit. She knelt on the floor, head resting on Bronn's side as his chest rose, then paused, then rose again. Slower now, like the air had gotten heavier inside his lungs. Bronn didn't lift his head when the vet returned. Dr. Myers had aged a year in a week. Her scrubs were clean, but her voice wasn't. It cracked before it even formed words. "There's fluid around the heart," she finally said. "A lot more than before." Joanna didn't ask how much time. She didn't need to. Dr. Myers crouched next to Bronn and ran a hand over his flank, gentle, slow. "I'd say days, a week, if he stays still. But dogs like him don't know how to stay still." Across the room, Robert pressed his knuckles into his mouth, the kind of silence only guilt understands. That night they didn't go back to the bedroom. They brought the mattress to the living room. Bronn lay in the center, wrapped in soft blankets, a baby monitor blinking quietly on the side table, water bowl within reach. Meds were stacked in labeled containers, pill pockets, syringes, warm compresses. But it was Lyla who kept the real vigil. She curled against him like she used to as a toddler, nestled in the crook of his chest. Her breathing matched his. She stroked his ear with one finger, whispering stories about bees and fairy stumps, and how tomorrow she'd read him her favorite book again. Bronn didn't wag, but he blinked once, and that was enough. Outside, Harold stood on the porch. His old army jacket was zipped halfway, and his eyes glistened in the amber porch light. He gripped the railing like it might tell him what to say, how to face the end of something he'd misjudged for too long. He hadn't said much since the vet's visit. But now, with the screen door between them and the wind pressing cool fingers into his neck, Harold let a breath shake loose. "I trained 100 dogs," he muttered. "Saw 'em come, saw 'em go. None of 'em ever looked at me the way he did." He didn't say it to anyone, but the words left him like a wound finally draining. He sank to the step, staring out into the dark, and wept. Joanna watched from inside. She didn't interrupt. Grief didn't need company. It needed honesty. She turned back to Bronn and Lyla. Her daughter had drifted into a light sleep, hands still resting on the curve of Bronn's ribs. The old dog's eyes opened halfway and found hers. They stared at each other for a long time, and in that quiet communion, no bark, no growl, no movement. Joanna finally understood what Robert had tried to explain in the hospital. Bronn wasn't just a dog. He was a memory made flesh. A second chance, wearing fur and failing lungs. And tomorrow, or maybe the day after, he would be gone. But not tonight. Tonight, he was still here, and that was all that mattered. The morning was softer than usual, as if the sky itself knew to whisper. No lawnmowers, no barking dogs, no shouting kids, just the rustle of early leaves and the hush of footfalls along the edge of Guardian's Park, the place that used to be a forgotten patch of overgrowth, now blooming with life and memory. Robert carried Bronn down the porch steps. He was lighter now, not just in weight, but in spirit. The pain meds made his eyes glassy, but not vacant. He knew where they were going. His tail thumped once against Robert's arm, barely audible, but full of meaning. Joanna walked beside them, not ahead, not behind, beside. Lyla clutched the leash in her little hands, even though it wasn't needed. Bronn didn't pull. He didn't stumble. He walked slowly, like a king no longer needing to command, just enough to be remembered. The iron gate creaked open as they entered the park. A few early visitors turned, recognizing the trio instantly. One man removed his hat. A woman quietly wiped her cheek. No one spoke. They didn't have to. Every child who ran past the bronze statue of the German shepherd at the center of the park already knew the story. But today wasn't for the town. Today was for Bronn, and the girl who never gave up on him. They took the long loop, past the swings and the mural wall. Bronn paused at the stump, the one left standing after the garden crew cleaned the old lot. Flowers surrounded it now, marigolds, lavender, milkweed, and butterflies, dozens of them. Lyla didn't speak. She just let go of the leash and knelt beside the stump. Bronn followed, slow but steady. He lowered himself with effort, joints trembling, heart pounding, and pressed his side against her knee. Together, they watched the butterflies rise and fall like soft confetti from the sky. Robert sat on the bench nearby, elbows on knees, hands clasped. Joanna stood behind him, one arm resting across his shoulders. Neither of them looked away. This wasn't just a walk. This was a farewell ritual. Every step Bronn took was a sentence. Every breath beside that stump a stanza. Lyla opened the small pouch she'd carried with her all week. Inside, a ribbon, faded pink. The same one she used to tie around Bronn's collar when they met in secret by the garden. She'd found it buried in the toy bin last night. She tied it again, fingers trembling. "There," she whispered. "Perfect." Bronn shifted slightly, resting his chin on her shoe. A bee buzzed nearby. Lyla didn't flinch. She only smiled. "That one's not angry," she whispered to Bronn. "That one just wants flowers." The light shifted. Longer shadows, softer gold. Time once again reminding them that everything, even this, must end. But for one brief morning, a dog once called Dangerous walked through a park named in his honor. He didn't save anyone today, didn't chase or bark or protect. He simply was. And somehow, that was more than enough. The house was quiet that night, not the kind of quiet that comes with bedtime routines or ticking clocks, but the kind that settles when something sacred is about to pass through. Lyla lay curled beside Bronn on the padded mat they'd placed beneath the window. The baby monitor softly blinked. His breathing was slow, uneven, but his tail moved just once when her little fingers brushed along his spine. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just kept her hand in his fur, like she had every night since he came home. Robert sat in the hallway, back against the wall, knees pulled up. Joanna was nearby, hands clenched around a lukewarm mug she hadn't sipped in an hour. The hallway light cast shadows onto the bedroom floor, stretching like a long goodbye that didn't want to be said. At 2:17 a.m., Bronn exhaled. Not a gasp, not a struggle, just a letting go, a long, soft breath. And then stillness. No whimper, no fear, only peace. Lyla blinked, then sat up slowly. She touched his ears. They didn't flick. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his, and whispered something no one else could hear. Joanna stepped into the doorway, frozen by the image. Her daughter and the dog she once thought was a threat. Now, just a girl saying goodbye to her best friend. Robert stepped in and knelt. He didn't speak either. There were no words for this kind of loss, only reverence. The morning sun broke through a pale mist. Joanna sat at the kitchen table, the same one where Lyla once scribbled crayon drawings of her secret dog. A photo now sat there. Bronn, in his therapy vest, beside a smiling Lyla with a butterfly on her shoulder. It looked accidental, like most miracles do. Robert stood in the yard, digging. He didn't let anyone else do it. Later that week, the town gathered at Guardians Park, not with a parade or speeches, but with flowers. Kids brought drawings. A man who once threw a rock stood with his head bowed. Officer Donna Reed wore her uniform, though there was no official duty, just respect. They laid Bronn beneath the stump, where the butterflies still came, and above it a plaque was placed. Simple, unpolished. But it said everything. Here lies Bronn. He didn't guard a yard. He guarded a life. That night, Lyla knelt in front of the plaque, a flashlight in one hand, the pink ribbon in the other. She tied it gently to a wildflower growing at the base. "Thank you," she said, then turned and walked home. But not alone, because guardians like Bronn, they never really leave. In a world often too quick to judge, Bronn's story reminds us that love, loyalty, and redemption can come from the most misunderstood places. He wasn't just a dog. He was a guardian, a silent protector, and a mirror to the hearts around him. What began with fear and chaos ended in compassion and legacy. Through the innocent bond between a little girl and a so-called dangerous dog, we witness the power of second chances and the silent language of trust. German shepherds like Bronn are not only intelligent and courageous, they carry a deep emotional intelligence that connects in ways words never could. His journey reminds us why animals deserve not only our protection, but our understanding. No creature should be thrown away because it's too much. Sometimes, what we call broken is just waiting to be seen. Let this story echo as a reminder. Real heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they limp into our lives covered in scars and leave carrying our hearts. If Bronn taught us anything, it's this: love fiercely, forgive deeply, and never underestimate the healing power of a dog who simply refuses to give up.